All right. Hello, everybody. So as many of you probably realize, I'm exceedingly passionate about this topic today. And we're going to be talking about the Kuiper belt object, Eris-Xena, who is typically just called Eris. And then I'm going to dive into why am I saying Eris-Xena, and you guys can decide for yourself what you prefer to call her or it. And we're going to dive into my big goal today. More than anything, I'm going to go through lots of facts. I'm going to go through astronomy and the astrology of this Kuiper belt object. But what I really am hoping to do, with especially those of you here live, and then those of you listening in the future, anytime, I would love to hear your thoughts too, is what is the essence of this archetype that's really trying to come through all of us. There's so many layers here and so much power in this in both archetypes and in the potential that I feel in the whole Kuiper belt and our relationship to it. So I'm really wanting this to be a conversation, not just a lecture, and an ongoing conversation, not only even those of you here live, but again, anybody listening to this in the future, and those of you here who are live also, I would love it to be an ongoing dialogue. So that is my intention. But for those of you who are here live, you would like to put your names in the chat and where you're from or where you're living, where you are located. That would be awesome. Anything else you want to share, feel free. And I will start my screen, share my screen. Okay, so even just looking at these two pictures of Eris on the left and Xena on the right is so powerful for me. I just look at those and I immediately feel myself come alive in a particular way. And this morning in my prayers, I felt the power of existence trying to move through my body. And that's what I feel when I look at both of these women, like when I look at both of these archetypes, and I feel myself as them, and I feel us, regardless of our gender, whatever our gender identity happens to be. I just feel this energy is so incredibly powerful with tons and tons of potential for our world. So let's dive in. All right. So for those of you who don't know me or don't know much about me, I'm Martha Alter Hines, and so I do astrology, clearly, but I do it from a perspective of having 20 years of experience as a clinical social worker, psychotherapist, and body worker. In particular, as a social worker, I focused on trauma and attachment work. And so I have a very passionate sense of social justice, and that comes through in a lot of what I do also. And I feel really called to bridge social justice and spirituality in lots and lots and lots of ways, including in my approach to astrology. So that's definitely an element here that I just want to clearly name. In terms of my background in astrology, the primary person I have studied with is Ari Moshe Wolf, who many of you in the evolutionary astrology world know well, and he is a wonderful human. Highly recommend him for lots and lots of reasons. And then I've also this year been working a lot with Heather Ensworth, and at least two of you here live also work with Heather Ensworth, and we're in the same course together. So you guys know her very well. I'm going to mention her a lot in this talk in particular because she is the person who really inspired me to incorporate the Xena archetype when approaching this particular Kuiper belt object, who is typically called Eris. And I will explain more about that. She has 2 videos out in the world about Eris-Xena. One of them I'll give you the link to in a second. And I highly, highly, highly recommend that video. I highly recommend Heather. I highly recommend her work on many levels. And lots of people here can probably attest to that. Also in my work, I channel and I incorporate spiritual healing on many levels into what I do. So my approach to astrology also is very infused with my connection to the spirit world. And one of my values is that I feel that it's really important for us each to have our own relationship with the cosmos, our own relationship with spirit, with the divine, with the spirit world, and to be centered and grounded in that when we approach astrology, when we approach life. So I try in all of my work to really hold space for the reality that we each have our own wisdom that is needing to come through. This is a collective experience. This is a collective, I guess you could say, project of healing that we're all, any of us sitting here watching this video are here to be helping the planet to heal. Like that's just a given. I can say that 100%. I'm sure that's true about all of you. And we're doing this together. So that's really important to me. Then when it comes to approaching archetypes, I've said this in some of my other talks and videos, but I'll just reiterate some of it. Another thing that's very important to me is to name the power of story, the power of narrative, and the reality that any way in which we give a narrative to anything is extremely powerful. So as a psychotherapist, a lot of what I did, a lot of the techniques I worked with were like narrative therapy, art therapy, expressive arts therapy. There are a lot of therapeutic techniques in the psychotherapy world that are essentially working with the reality that when we give a different storyline to a traumatic event or just life in general, it takes on a completely different meaning, right? So when we're approaching astrology, I've given this example a few times, but for example, if we look at a chart and we look at transits happening and we see that whatever it is, Pluto is about to conjunct our moon, or Saturn is about to conjunct our Venus, or whatever. If we have a certain narrative about Pluto or Saturn or whatever we're looking at, we can get very scared and we can actually even have panic attacks. I mean, how many people have you heard of that have even had astrologers say to you, I'm looking at your chart and I know you will die on this day. You know, what's going to happen for that person? They're probably not going to be feeling very good. So the story we give to anything has a direct effect on ourselves and on the people we're working with and the world around us. So it's really important to me to be very conscious in the way that we choose the stories, the meaning of the stories, and even the stories themselves that we assign to anything in our lives, but in particular with regard to astrology. That's really key in my work, is to just bring as much consciousness as I possibly can to why am I choosing this narrative or this interpretation? Are there other options? Are there other possibilities that would give a very different opportunity for healing or an opportunity for transformation, which I think is the ultimate goal of especially of evolutionary astrology. It's in my opinion, the goal is soul level healing and evolution. So I try to be very, very conscious and step way back and always have the assumption that I could be wrong, or not necessarily wrong, but there could be other ways I just am not seeing in the moment, and that will always be evolving. So I try to give lots of space for other possibilities to come in all the time. Great. Okay, so these are some of the resources that I used. You can come back to this video and screenshot this if you want to get those. But in the chat, for those of you who are here live, I'm going to put 2 links. The first link is relevant right this second. So this first link is the Eris-Xena talk that I mentioned about, that Heather Ensworth did pretty recently. I think I've watched that video now 5 or 6 times. I've watched it so many times. It's excellent. It's phenomenal. And now I need to get back to you guys. Where did my screen go?
Martha, while you're doing that, I can put the links in the description of the video on YouTube as well.
That would be awesome.
Cool.
I'm going to stop share and then I'm going to go back to share because I lost my presentation.
These things happen.
And then, so while I'm doing this, the second link that I just gave you guys also, that Sue is going to very kindly put in the description, is for the Rebecoming the One symposium, which is free. And I will say more about it at the end, but I'm still working on adding in all of the workshops that will be available for that, but it's available to sign up now. And I would love for all of you to do that. And I will say more about it in a minute. Okay, yay, I got back. Okay. All right. So Eris-Xena. So this is an artist's interpretation of Eris-Xena. On the right, the big round object, and then her moon. And so I just wanted to sit with that for a second and give you a chance to be with them. Again, this is not an actual photo, but I just think it's neat to be with some version of the actual being. Remember that it is a physical thing. It's not just an idea. It is actually a physical thing that we're talking about. Okay, so now we get into, this is so cool on so many levels, and I'm super excited to talk about it. And I'm really excited to get your thoughts about this. In so many ways. All right, so let's start with the astronomy of Eris-Xena. So Eris-Xena is a dwarf planet. Her mass is larger than Pluto. She was discovered on January 5th, 2005. And when she was first, so her whole discovery story is fascinating. And listen to Heather's talk to get more details about this. So a lot of what I'm about to say, Heather also talks about. And then I'm going to take this in a slightly different, I have a few thoughts that came up for me that Heather didn't mention. And then I'm also going to give all of us an opportunity to drop in at the end. I will lead us in a channeled, guided experience to actually travel to Eris-Xena so that we can, not only think about this through our brains, but really feel into her. And again, I think this is I know this is a collective remembering, right? And I know many of you here really, really well. And I know that you're incredibly powerful and super wise. And I just cannot wait to hear what comes through all of you, not just me. So that's where we're heading as we go through this. Okay. So her discovery story, super fascinating. So she was discovered again on January 5th, 2005. And initially she was called the 10th planet. And the person who discovered her just casually named her Xena. And if you haven't heard of Xena, the TV character, I will tell you more about her in a minute. But her moon was initially called Gabrielle after Xena's best friend in the show. So the Discovery team had saved the nickname Xena for whatever planetary body was discovered that was larger than Pluto. And Xena, Eris, the mass was larger than Pluto, so she got the name Xena. When they were trying to decide on the official name, a couple other names they considered were Lila, which referred to a Hindu myth having to do with creation and the chaos of creation. And I don't know a lot of details about that, but I thought that was really interesting. And then another one was Persephone, but Persephone is already the name of an asteroid, so that got thrown out eventually. And then in 2006, Xena's name was changed to Eris, and her moon was, instead of being called Gabrielle, was then called Dysnomia, after the daughter of Eris. Okay, so here is Xena from the TV show. And again, I'll say more about her. This is Gabrielle with her. And I, just as a side note, I want to say, I find this, she's not in the show, that it's not a lesbian couple, but there's so much out there highlighting the overtones of the potential of, a relationship between them. And so when I think about the naming of couples in astrology, it brings up for me the fact that there, so far as I know, only heterosexual couples out there named. And how I would be so in favor, please, of having some non-heteronormative stuff named. That would be very cool. That's a side note, but okay. And here is Eris in some images. So just to start to get a sense of the feeling of these two, Xena and Eris, and we'll come back to it. Okay. So the discovery of Eris, fascinating, actually kicked off this controversy about what characterizes a planet. And because Eris was discovered and named that 10th planet, then, there's this whole conversation about, wait a second, hang on, is this actually what we believe is true, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And so it led to the astronomers clarifying their criteria for what a planet is. And again, Heather Ensworth goes into detail about this in her video. And again, please watch that. It's very well done. But I'll give you the gist here because this is fascinating. So what the astronomers decided in 2006 is that a planet has 3 characteristics that define it as a planet. Number 1, it needs to be in orbit around the sun. Cool. Number 2, it has sufficient mass to assume hydrostatic equilibrium, which means it's round. Okay. But this one is super interesting. Number 3, it needs to have, quote unquote, cleared the neighborhood around its orbit. So what they mean by that is that it needs to basically dominate its own orbit. So it needs to not share another, like an orbital path with another planet or planetary body. So that's just very interesting. What they're basically saying is that in order to be classified as a planet, you need to be dominant. You need to be in charge. That's just an interesting thing to sit with. What is that really about? To me, it feels very patriarchal and hierarchical, and I don't really like it, to be blunt, right? So because of these new criteria, Pluto was then, quote unquote, demoted to being a dwarf planet, not a planet. And Eris-Xena was also named a dwarf planet. So she went from being the 10th planet to being now a dwarf planet, with Pluto also as a dwarf planet. And we now have 8 things that are called planets instead of 9 or 10 with Pluto and Eris-Xena. But as we get more into this conversation, and I've talked to Tatsi about this, and I stuck this into my presentation because it's so important to me. As I go more into what the Kuiper belt is, I want to sit also with this question of, is this really actually a demotion of Pluto? Or was this almost like a Plutonian transformation for Pluto? was this actually like Pluto going into its own chrysalis and becoming its own new butterfly? And I'll explain more about what I'm getting at with that. But I'm feeling more and more like maybe this feels like an insult to Pluto, or a demotion, but maybe actually it's really great. It's really actually this incredible opportunity for us to expand our consciousness into this whole Kuiper belt, which I will go again more into in a second. Okay. Yeah, and then I'm going to show you guys the orbit of Eris-Xena, because for a couple of different reasons it's fascinating in and of itself. So but just to name the orbital time period of Eris-Xena is more than twice that of Pluto. It's 557 years. It's highly elliptical and tilted 44 degrees off the plane of the ecliptic with the Earth. So let me show you what I mean. Okay. So in this picture, you can see the sun is in the middle. We have all the planets that are near the sun, which aren't even shown here because this is showing the outer solar system. But of course, in the inner solar system, we have Mercury, then Venus, then the Earth, then Mars. Then we have the asteroid belt, which has things in it like, Ceres, Persephone, Hecate, Juno, Pallas Athena, Eros, on and on. There's hundreds of asteroids in the asteroid belt, which is between Mars and Jupiter. And then we have the orbit of Jupiter, then Saturn, then Uranus, then Neptune. And you can see that all of those orbits up to Neptune are pretty circular-ish. And I heard a talk actually with Heather Ensworth and Melanie Reinhardt about Cheroklo, which also I highly recommend if you guys want to go down another path with another amazing goddess. And Melanie in that talk describes the ecliptic as a fried egg. So I want to give that example so you guys can picture it. It's like, so most of the planets have an orbit around the sun that's pretty much on the same plane, like a fried egg would be, right? Like, so there's the sun in the middle, the yolk, and then the orbits of Mercury, Venus, the Earth, Mars, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, out to Neptune, or, they would pretty much be in the white part of the egg. But the orbit of Pluto starts to go a little bit up and down from where that white of the egg would be. And then if we look at Eris, look at this. So see the orbit of Neptune in the blue? That would be like the to me, the outside of the white of the egg. Pluto is the first one that is tilted. And it's also elliptical. So it's not so much of a circle. It's actually really, starts to get more of an oval shape. Then look at Eris. Eris is like way off the plane of that fried egg. And her orbit is so long. It's so far. And I will show you guys this also in a second a little more clearly, but every planet or planetary body that is elliptical like this, well, anyone that even that is more circular, they all have a point in their orbit that is called the perihelion, and then another one that's called the aphelion. The perihelion is peri meaning near, or closer, is the part of their orbit that's closest to the sun or the earth, and then the aphelion, a meaning away, is the part of their orbit that's the farthest from the sun. And right now Eris-Xena happens to be way out here in Aries, where she is the farthest from the sun. So she's in her orbit, she's in this area right now. And she moves really slowly. So she's been in this area for a while. So I just want to, when we go into especially the guided part, I just want you to have this image, and I'll come back to the image when we do that, but I want you to see visually and get it. Like, she is in a totally different stratosphere from the rest of our solar system. I mean, it's a really, really fascinating where she travels. She is making her own journey, really. And then I also want to point out, though, for context, if you guys know about Sedna, okay, let me go back to this one. When we're looking at our solar system, we've got, the inner planets, the outer planets. Then when we get to Pluto, which again is the first one that's kind of like tilted and has more of a elliptical shape, and it has a much longer orbit. Pluto, which was discovered in 1930, is now considered to be the first discovered Kuiper belt object. So all of these like little dots around here are the Kuiper belt. And the other Kuiper belt objects weren't discovered really until the early 2000s. So Pluto was discovered in 1930. Then in 2005, Eris-Xena was discovered. And like I just said, Eris-Xena's discovery actually resulted in Pluto being, quote unquote, demoted to being named a dwarf planet and recognized as the first discovered Kuiper belt object. And now Pluto is considered part of that Kuiper belt, and there's lots and lots and lots of other Kuiper belt objects being discovered and named, and they're all fascinating. So here, though, I just again want to give context, because when you go farther out from the Kuiper belt, then we come to what's called the Oort cloud. And the Oort cloud is even more fascinating to me, and that is a whole other subject. But the Oort cloud is actually, when I was researching about it, it's considered more almost of a theoretical phenomenon. But what I could find was that there are currently 3 discovered actual objects that are thought to be part of this Oort cloud. And the Oort cloud is similar to the Kuiper belt, but much, much, much farther out. And it's so far out that it's like almost like a conduit between us and other star systems. So like our sun is a star. So our solar system is a star system. So when I say star system, I don't mean like alien starships. I mean literal other suns with orbits around them. And our Oort cloud essentially is like it's touching often or coming very close to other star systems. So things in the Oort cloud, in a sense, you can say, have come from some kind of energetic exchange with other solar systems or star systems. And Sedna is one of those. So Sedna was the first discovered Oort cloud object, just like Pluto was the first discovered Kuiper belt object. And you can see here the orbit of Sedna compared to the Kuiper belt. Kuiper belt is tiny compared. I mean, you saw the orbit of Eris, which is huge compared to our regular solar system. But then the orbit of Sedna is over 11,000 years. So the orbit of Pluto, which we think of as being very, very long, because it is 248-ish years. The orbit of Eris is more than double that at 557 years. But the orbit of Sedna is over 11,000 years. And she currently is actually heading toward her perihelion. So her closest point to the sun, to the earth, to us. She will reach her perihelion in 2076. And she's currently in terms of our zodiac, she is at the very end degrees of Taurus, and she's in June 2023 about to enter Gemini. And she's over here, but she's come from way over here. Yeah. So I just want to give that context. It's fascinating to me. Okay, so back to Eris-Xena. So Eris-Xena reached her closest point to the Earth in approximately 1977, which happens to be the year I was born. Chiron, and that was in Aries. Chiron was, wait, I mixed that up on my slide. Hang on one second. That should say furthest point from the Earth. Okay. And Eris-Xena and Chiron were conjunct in 1971 at 12 degrees of Aries. They'll be conjunct again in 2025 at 25 Aries. And there's this whole set of thoughts that I have about the role of Eris-Xena compared with the role of Chiron, both specifically in Aries, that I'll get to in a second. Yeah. I'm going to come back to this once we've dove into the meaning of Eris-Xena, and it'll make a little more sense. And I'm also going to come back to this because I feel like we should jump into the stories of these before I go into the astrology. I think that is feeling intuitively right at the moment. Okay. So if we go back to what is Xena and what is Eris, because like I said before, originally the person who discovered this Kuiper belt object just casually named her Xena, but then when her name was formalized, it was changed to Eris. So Xena is the name of a character in a TV show. Here is her picture. And this TV show ran from 1995 to 2001. It takes place primarily in quote unquote ancient Greece, but I was reading a lot about it, and you know, it takes license with what ancient Greece was, because ancient Greece then transforms into lots of other places and times in the world. And it's just, I would say it's more of like a conglomeration of lots of stuff. But you know, theoretically it's set in ancient Greece. And but what's important about the story to me is that Xena starts out her life as a child with really traumatic circumstances, lots and lots of violence, lots of murder, and you know, just horrible things happening all around her. So she starts out her young adult life as choosing to be a villain and a warlord. And then over time, she has a transformation, and she feels guilt about that and changes she chooses, instead of being a warlord and a bringer of violence, she chooses to fight for the greater good, quote unquote. And we're going to come back to that again, but that's just the basic gist of the Xena story. So then Eris in mythology was the Greek goddess of strife and discord, and her Roman equivalent name is Discord, right? The opposite of her was considered harmony or harmony. And the story that lots of us know about her essentially is that she was a goddess who was not invited to a party of the gods and goddesses, and she threw the golden apple into the party with a note that said, "To the fairest." And as a result of her throwing this apple into the party, the goddesses fought over who was the fairest, and long story short, that argument led to the Trojan War. So Eris is, you know, in that version of the story, is considered a goddess who caused mayhem and chaos in a sense. I have feelings and thoughts about that, which I'll get to in a second. But I would love to pause for a minute and just from even those sort of beginning senses of who Xena is and who Eris is in their stories, I would love to hear from you guys what comes up. Like, what themes do you feel like are similar? What feels different? I have my own thoughts, but I would love to hear yours first. Does anybody want to say anything? You can just unmute, because I can't necessarily see you. And yes, Valerie, I love Lucy Lawless. Yes.
Martha, I think people are going to have to raise their hands, and then
You're right.
And then I'll have to unmute them. So if anybody wants to talk, then
yeah,
just go ahead and raise your hand.
Stop share so I can see you guys. Oh, Jackie. Yeah. Can you unmute now?
Yeah.
Yes.
I just it speaks to me about both disharmonious beginnings often come from traumatic beginnings, and so that's where the crossover is with Xena and Eris, and the fact that and maybe even the fact that this asteroid planet, this tiny planet, took so long to be discovered. It was like she was being overlooked, so she had to make a bit of a kind of define herself differently and be way out there. I don't know. It's kind of
what
nice.
I read is that because her orbit is so elliptical and so tilted from our plane, that was part of why it took a long time for her to be discovered. I think she was seen in certain photos, but not recognized as an actual thing that the astronomers wanted to focus on. Yeah, really interesting.
Hmm.
And she moves so slow that they had a hard time, pinpointing that it was something that was moving.
Mm. Anyone else want to say something? Oh, Valerie, you raised your hand. Can you unmute?
Yes, I'm trying to unmute myself.
Okay.
It's like it's interesting. I was just reflecting on the two sort of mythologies that you put up there, and it's as Xena, traumatic start to life, villain warlord, but then she transmutes and transforms herself into someone that is, you know, doing good and wanting to be present and bring, light and love into the world. And Eris, in her form, she just continues to be the goddess of strife and discord. She doesn't, she feels left out. She feels unappreciated, has to trigger a response to her being. And so it's like I don't think we know, in the story, it's like she ends up causing a war. So, and a pretty significant war as well. So it's like one transforms from the trauma and the pain to, light and love. And the other one is caught in that whole dynamic of, I'm not seen, so I'm not heard. So I'm just going to cause discord in all of this. I didn't see it like that before, but it was just like all of a sudden, boom, yes.
Yeah, I definitely, I can, and I have a slightly different perspective I could also see that from, but I want to hold off on my my thoughts until other people get a chance to talk. Anyone else have feelings or thoughts about it? Nicole. Oh, I have to hang on. Here you go. Okay, now try.
Hi, okay. Um, I'm kind of bouncing around. So I did look at your graphic. From what I remember in Heather's too, does the Eris ecliptic go like into Neptune's orbit sometimes? And then is it like cross in and out of that in Pluto or something? I was just thinking with what Valerie was sharing or what you've shared too, like it could be going from it like into that Neptune orbit to me would explain like the healing and the transformation into that more compassionate, like wanting to help and do the highest good
I
thing.
love that. I actually don't remember. That is such a good question. I will look that up. I
I
love that.
think I remember that. Yeah, let's find out. Thanks.
Cool. Valerie, do you remember? Or are you trying to say something?
Let me find my voice. I really, it's like, yes, Nicole, I agree with Nicole. I believe that's it. And I remember a picture that we saw last Saturday in class that sort of showed that, and it makes sense when you put it in dodging in and out. And if it touches Pluto, then you're also the underworld journey, right? So it's like you're dealing with that wisdom and that of Neptune going into the underworld to heal and to discard and then, come out the other side type of thing.
Yeah, now I need to know. That is a really good point. Yes, I love thinking about when these objects cross each other's orbits, like what that is doing. Again, the video that Heather just recently made with Melanie Reinhardt on Cheroklo, they discuss that phenomenon of when things are crossing each other's orbits, what that energetically could be. And yeah, again, go watch that video if you haven't. It's super beautiful. Cool. Any other thoughts? Okay. I will get back to my thingy here. All right. So yeah, I mean, the questions that come up for me when I'm thinking about Eris and Xena in astrology. some of the questions I have, what is the true nature of discord? Like, what does that actually mean? What did it mean that she threw the golden apple? Was it, even if she threw this golden apple that said to the fairest, is it actually her fault that the Trojan War got started? Or was it the fault of the dysfunction of the whole rest of society? You know, like, why was she blamed? What was her intention when she did that? And something that I've thought about in my own life, because I'll show you my chart in a second. My Eris-Xena is extremely prominent. It's precisely opposite my natal Pluto. And for any of you who happen to be born, I was born in 1977, and because Eris-Xena and Pluto move pretty slowly, all of us born right around that time. I know at least one of you was born in 1976. So lots of us in that time period have Eris-Xena opposite Pluto. And I also happen to have my South Node in Aries, and you know, got lots of things in my chart that are very much about being somebody who speaks up. Somebody Valerie knows this about me too. I don't sit quiet when I think there's injustice in the world, and so that's very much an Eris-Xena quality in me. And so I've thought about times in my life, especially when I was in social work. I worked for Child Protective Services, and I saw a lot happening in that system that was illegal, amoral, and harmful. And I would throw the golden apple in a sense, right? I mean, I can think of times where I said things in meetings like, this is illegal. And it would cause a huge disruption. Was my intention to start a war? Absolutely not. My intention was to save children's lives and to save families. My intention was to fight for justice. So, yeah, so I just think I feel called to, you know, really step back and think more carefully, what does that, even in the Eris story, what was she actually feeling? What was that whole, her role, what was her role really about? And I don't think there's a black and white answer, but I think it's important to at least reflect on it. And then, yeah, when I think about the Xena story, for sure, I think about her trauma. I think about my own life, and I think about the fact that I think lots of us go through times where we have either personally experienced trauma or we've witnessed trauma happening in the world. Like, for example, in my life, I was born in Thailand and grew up in Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Kenya, and the United States. And then I became a social worker, and I specialized in trauma and attachment work. So I didn't have huge amounts of trauma in my personal life, but I witnessed so much trauma all around the world from the minute I was born. As a child, I lived in Peshawar, Pakistan, which is on the border of Afghanistan, in the 80s, when there was the war happening between Russia and Afghanistan, and there were tons and tons and tons of Afghan refugees in the town I lived in. You know, so it was just, I witnessed a ton of the effects of violence, towards women in particular. And so I went through a period when I was 19, especially, where I traveled back to Pakistan, and long story, but essentially I came back to the United States, shaved my head, and decided to be a lesbian separatist because I hated men. That didn't last very long. It lasted about 2 or 3 months until I realized that wasn't probably the smartest choice for myself, and it wasn't actually going to help anything. So to me, that's like, not that I was a warlord or a villain like Xena, but it was me going so far into the rage, you know, and the rage was justified in a sense, because what I was witnessing when I went to Pakistan was women being really hurt. I mean, truly, 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 this is not okay what goes on the planet. So it wasn't unjustified what I felt, but to go to that extreme as a reaction feels like something we could naturally do with our rage and our desire for justice, but it's out of balance, my opinion. And then I think there's a way that, yes, Deborah, reacting versus responding, exactly, yeah. Then there's a way we can come more into the have a transformation like Xena did, and learn how to channel that same, it's really love. It's actually coming from love. That's what it is. Like, I loved these women in Pakistan who I saw being treated so horribly. And I wanted to help them. That's really what it came down to. So then, you know, I grew out of being 19 and I became a social worker. I became a therapist, and I was not a lesbian suffragist, and I had children, and one of them happened to be a boy, and you know, those kinds of things. So I then channeled that same desire to fight for justice, but in a way that was more balanced and truly fighting for the greater good, if you want to put it like that. And in a lot of the work I do now, it's a similar thing. Marilyn, let me unmute. Can you unmute? Try unmuting yourself. I think you're trying to say something.
There we go. Okay.
There we go.
Oh, thanks. Thanks so much. I had to get dressed so that I could, speak. I'm loving your presentation. Seeing the visuals are wonderful. Hearing your story about Eris, she's completely captivated me. And I wanted to say something about, I'm a Jungian psychologist, so I love story and myth, but like you, social justice is right up there. So she's my gal. And I think one thing I wanted to add, and this is also on the heels of learning from Heather Ensworth, is that, her name, Chaos and Discord, or strife and discord, yes, she starts the ball rolling, so to speak. She begins in chaos, but what is it in service to? Yes, justice, the voice of the exile, the voice from the margins, but out of creativity. And that's a very old tale. Yeah, in every tradition in the world, where's the beginning of creation? It's in chaos, the void,
Yes.
The breath that comes over the waters, calms in the Bible. Anyway, so in terms of new science, I just wanted to tag that part. With her discovery, it's like it also brings the feminine right into correspondence with new science, which is all new creation comes from chaos. You have to be in conflict, back and forth. And then that third thing, the middle way, the synthesis, Anyway, so she's a creative force, and that's really how I hold her. Yeah, she starts by causing quite a disruption, but we have to shake it up so that something new, and I'm so excited about what new is emerging, and you're part of that, and the work that you're doing. So thank you so much, Brava, and what she's bringing to all of us, speaking from her voice. It's like, oh, because we're building a new earth, and this is the new story, and she's just a wonderful champion for that. So thank you for listening.
Well, thank you. Yeah, well, you're bringing in a key component that I meant to say, and I'm so glad you brought that up. And thank you for everything you just said. I completely agree. And Jackie, yes. Can you unmute? Oh, you're still muted. You're still muted. There you go.
Just a quick thing, that all of these myths are written by men. And so there's a total misrepresentation, kind of misunderstanding there anyway, with women and women's power, perhaps. So that's just what occurred to me, that I needed to say it.
Absolutely, yes. And they're, I mean, I would assume they're all written by men, but more than that, they're written in the context of patriarchy.
Yeah.
yeah, and so it's yes, yes, yes. In terms of what you were saying, Marilyn, another huge component of this, the Eris archetype for me is, yes, the whole theme of the dark feminine being a bridge of life and death. And so when I think of the Eris archetype, it's not the same, but it's definitely, I definitely think of Kali, and I definitely think of, you know, all those powerful dark goddesses who I personally identify with very strongly. Another one would be Lilith. And in this, you'll see this when I show you my chart in a second, but at this moment, the transits of both Eris-Xena and Lilith are very strong for me personally. So I'm feeling essentially the need for the feminine to, you know, fully be present in all of its power, which is in service of life. Like even the destruction, quote unquote, is in, it's like the tree that falls over in the forest, decomposes, that's destruction, if you want to put it that way, that then becomes compost for everything else. I don't know if that, Marilyn, if that fits with what you feel. If you want to say anything, feel free.
Yes, totally. Yes,
Yeah.
it's very much about the dark feminine and the blood of her. I resonate with everything. She's strong in my chart too, Lilith. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kali,
I
yeah.
love Lilith. Yeah. Love her. Cool. Yeah. And so, and then, you know, the other couple questions that come up for me are, especially with the Xena archetype, but also with Eris and with the Chiron archetype, which is a whole other subject, but all of the above. What does it mean to be a spiritual warrior? What does it mean to be that warrior archetype that is in service of good and that is coming from wanting to serve God or serve the divine, whatever way you put that. And then a final question is, how can we evolve in our relationship to anger, hurt, and going our own way? All of those feelings of the need, you know, the anger, the hurt, and our need to go our own way, the way that Eris has, you know, its own orbit that's very much its own thing. Those are all legitimate, important feelings, and they can all, just like with anything with the dark goddess, can have the potential to go really off course and be really unbalanced, like go into a rage that is just pure destruction, but it can also be channeled in service of good, which to me is the highest expression of all of that. So, where are we on time? Okay. Is it okay, Sue, if I go another 30 minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Have at
cool.
it.
All right. So now I want to briefly talk about the current astrology, and then I want to have a little time to do a little guided thing. And then I'd love to hear some more of your thoughts. I'm going to sort of zoom through the astrology. There's a lot I could say, but I'll give you at least the highlights. So currently, as lots of you know, those of you who are, some of you are really familiar with astrology, so you're going to already know this, but Pluto and Eris-Xena have been in a square for the last, 2-3 years, and they're moving out of that square, but they're still within orb of squaring each other. And this, at this moment, today is April 20th, 2023. Jupiter is about to conjunct Eris-Xena, I think on Sunday. And so last night we had this incredibly powerful eclipse at 29 degrees of Aries. Eris-Xena is currently at 24 of Aries, and Jupiter is at 23, I want to say, of Aries. So the eclipse, the new moon, was squared by Pluto, and Jupiter was essentially conjunct Eris-Xena, which was essentially conjunct the new moon. So, you know, Jupiter conjunct Eris-Xena conjunct the new moon squared by Pluto on an eclipse. Like, unbelievably powerful. And then Eris-Xena will still be, you know, Jupiter and Eris-Xena will still be very powerful in the eclipse we're having on May 5th. And then next October, the North Node, you know, in July of 2023, the nodes are going to switch into Aries and Libra. And by next October, the North Node will be exactly conjunct Eris-Xena on the eclipses, like right at the time of the eclipses. So Eris-Xena is not only strong now, she's like going to be even stronger for those eclipses. Super powerful. And when I was looking at the discovery chart of Eris-Xena, the North Node was also essentially conjunct Eris-Xena at that time, because that was in 2005, which is about the length of, you know, that's 18 years ago. So that's about how long it takes for the nodes to go around. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. By next fall, we will be there. So Eris-Xena will essentially be having its nodal return next fall. And it will also happen to be on my nodal reversal. So Eris-Xena, as you'll see in a second, is sitting right on my natal south node, and she'll still be there next October when I have my exact nodal reversal. So she's speaking to me very strongly, and I think she will be for a while. Yeah, and Pluto is squaring the nodes of the moon right now, and will still be an orb of squaring the nodes of the moon, while the North Node is approaching its conjunction with Eris-Xena, etc. So it's just really, really, really powerful. Okay. This is the chart of the eclipse from last night. So this is from the eclipse at 29 degrees of Aries, which occurred on April 19th, 2023. And you can see that the new moon was squaring Pluto. Jupiter was almost conjunct Eris-Xena, which was almost basically, I mean, very close to the new moon. Here is the eclipse that's happening on May 5th, 2023. And at that point, Jupiter will have just passed Eris-Xena. Jupiter will be, you know, approaching the North Node, and the full moon itself will be at 14 Scorpio, but Jupiter and Eris-Xena will still be close to the nodes, and so still the energy of them to me is playing in there for sure. But then take a look next October. Here's the North Node of the moon within 8 minutes of Eris-Xena on the eclipse, the new moon solar eclipse next October 14th, 2023. The new moon will be at 21 Libra, and the nodes will be at 24 Libra, and Pluto will where is Pluto? Over here. Pluto will be at 27 Capricorn, so squaring the nodes of the moon. Also incredibly powerful.
Martha, also that eclipse in October of 2023 goes across the United States.
You're right.
Yeah.
Wow.
That one and the following one make an X in Texas.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, and I want to point out, I just noticed this actually. Lilith, the asteroid, will be on the south node of the moon on that eclipse on October 14th, with Eris-Xena on the north node. So we're just talking about the dark goddesses, and Lilith being one of the very, very strong ones. Eris-Xena and Lilith will both be very strongly playing into that eclipse.
Wow.
Yeah. Squared by Pluto.
Right.
Okay, and then here's the second eclipse next October. So that will be a full moon at 5 degrees of Taurus. Still, the North Node will be at 24 Aries, and Eris-Xena will be at 24 Aries, conjunct that North Node. You've got Chiron sitting there not that far from it. I mean, it's going to be a while. It won't be until 2025 that Chiron and Eris-Xena are conjunct, because they both move slowly. But the energy of Chiron there just feels present for sure for me. And again, I feel like they both have this question of, well, what does it mean to be a spiritual warrior? What do we do with our anger that's positive and channeled in a healing way? So that energy is very strong to me here. And in all of these eclipses. And Pluto is still squaring the nodes. And where's Lilith? Lilith is sitting near the sun on that eclipse. Yeah. So anyway, lots of other things I could say, but I will keep it there. And then just really, really briefly, I normally in these talks give lots of chart examples, but I knew this was going to take a really long time. So I'm just going to give my chart as an example today, just so you can see something really quickly. And I will say in a minute, lots of you are coming tomorrow to an eclipse gathering that I'm giving, and any of you listening to this talk could sign up for that if you want. And in that eclipse gathering, I will look at people's charts more in depth, specifically more at the eclipses of this April, May. But if you want me to bring in Eris-Xena into that, I will, because it's obviously she's very, very prominent in the eclipses. So just for me, like I've already said, my Eris-Xena is at 13 Aries and my Pluto is at 13 Libra. So they're opposite each other. Very, very strong in my chart natally. And then you can see currently, and for quite a while, she's been sitting right on my South Node. My South Node is at 2452 Aries. Eris-Xena currently is at 2438. And as I showed you a minute ago, the nodes next fall in October will be at 24, I think, 52, 53, 54 of Aries with the North Node. The North Node will be exactly on my South Node to the minute with Eris-Xena on those eclipses, with Pluto squaring the nodes. And you can see also right now for me, Lilith, the asteroid, is about to go direct right on my natal moon and my ascendant. So I'm feeling this Eris-Xena and Lilith very strongly, very, very strongly. And it's powerful. It's mostly actually a really awesome feeling. Okay. So let's, does anybody else have anything you want to say briefly before we go into at least a little bit of a channeled experience of these? Kathy, are you wanting to say something? You're unmuted. Or was that not intentional? Oh, never mind. You're not unmuted. Sorry, I just didn't see you. Anybody want to say anything? Oh, Valerie. Yes.
Aha, I have mastered the muting. This is very exciting. So what is fascinating to me in your slideshow here is there are times when she's referred to as Eris-Xena, and then there's times when you put Xena Eris in there.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's quite, I'm curious because it's, that's really changing the polarity of the energy basically by switching the names around. Her name is like named planet is Eris, but Xena's coming in there. So yeah, just curious.
I did that on purpose because yeah, I couldn't decide which one should come first. I don't know. And who should, I'm not the person who should decide such a thing, right? And it does feel different to me. So I don't know.
it's very different energetically, especially given the discussion that we've just been having in terms
Mm.
of her role, you know, like it's like Eris-Xena or Xena Eris. It's like
Mm.
it evokes, at least for me, evokes a completely different, you know, connection.
Yeah,
And I know
yeah,
where it is in my chart, you know, so it's like, oh wow, okay, that really sort of changes the sense, the feeling, my thoughts.
totally. I agree. Yeah. Yes. Very good. You picked up on that. Cool. Anybody else? Okay. So just briefly go into a little bit of a channel thing here. Because again, it's really important to me that we don't just do this through our brains, but we also do this through our bodies and our spirits. And I feel like a lot of what is meant to come through each of us is meant to come through our souls, our whole beings. So that's why I try to do this in the work I do. Okay. So I'm gonna try to keep this to like 5-7 minutes, but we'll see. Okay. So as feels right for you, you can take a deep breath and sink down into your body and feel the light of the heart of Mother Gaia Earth spark awake and permeate the whole body, the whole being of the whole Earth itself, which includes you and your body and your whole being. So that light is surrounding you, enveloping you, holding you. And then you can feel the light of your own heart spark awake, envelop you, surround you. And the light of the heart of Source, the divine, also spark awake and descend down over your body like a waterfall of light, holding you and surrounding you and mixing with the light of the heart of Mother Gaia Earth and the light of your own heart. And just take another deep breath. And then you can feel, as feels exactly right for you, gently and only with your complete and total permission, in your timing and the way that is just right for you. You can feel that light then begin to help you to rise up through your body, out through the entire atmosphere of the earth. You are rising further and further, higher up until you get to, you can see now the moon. You can wave to the moon, maybe bow to her or him or it. You can see the sun. You can see Venus, Mercury between you and the sun. You can see Mars, the entire asteroid belt, keep rising. You can see Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. You keep rising. And then far out beyond the orbit of Pluto, making a 90-degree angle. If there's a line between where Pluto is and the sun, imagine a 90-degree angle tilted upward on a slant, and follow that line all the way out past the orbit of Pluto. And keep going and keep going and keep going. All the way past the orbit of every single planet in the main solar system of our sun. So you are traveling past Saturn, the orbit of Saturn, the orbit of Uranus, the orbit of Neptune, the orbit of Pluto. And you keep going much, much, much farther until you get to somewhere in the constellation, not in the constellation itself, but toward the constellation of Cetus the Whale. And you find this being, this object, more than twice as far away as Pluto is from the sun. This object is round and it has a moon. And the orbit it takes around the sun is not shaped like a circle. It's shaped more like an oval. And if the main planets of the solar system here are on a plane like that fried egg, the orbit that this being takes is tilted 44 degrees. So at a pretty steep incline to that main plane of that fried egg of the orbit of the other planets in the solar system. And right now she is almost as far as she ever gets from the Earth, from the sun. She's in the constellation of Cetus the Whale. But if we were to travel down to the plane of that fried egg, she would be in what we name in our zodiac Aries. So she's sitting out here in her own part of space, on her own journey, holding space for us, holding space for you in her own way, with her own wisdom, her own power, her own being. That is her, that is you, that is a manifestation of the divine in her own unique way, just as you are, and just as each of us are. And you can take another deep breath and just be here with this being. Again, it has a moon in this far reach of the solar system. It's extremely cold and icy. And you can just take a moment to be with this planetary being and feel whatever it is you feel. Maybe it has a message for you. Maybe there's something that arises for you in your own body or your soul or your knowing of any kind. Maybe there's just silence. Maybe there's a remembering of some kind. Maybe there are questions. You can just notice whatever it is that you feel. Whatever it is perfect. And when you have more time, you can come back to this place anytime you like. You can be with this being, ask it questions, feel into the healing of its orbit. What is this? What is the energetic of what it feels like for it to have such a long orbit and to be tilted with an orbit that is in such a different, literally such a different plane from the plane of the orbits of most of the other planets? And you can come back and be with those questions anytime you like, for as long as you like. And in this moment, just take another deep breath, and you can say thank you to this being, or have whatever dialogue feels right for you. Maybe honor it, maybe bow to it. And let it send you love or whatever it is here to be conveying for you. And then take another deep breath and slowly come all the way back through the orbits of all of these planets: Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter, the asteroid belt, Mars, until you get back. You can see the moon of the Earth now, and come all the way back through the atmosphere of Earth. You can wave to that moon, the sun, Mercury, Venus, and feel yourself descend back through the top of your head into your body completely. Feel yourself grounded as the Earth. Take another deep breath and feel yourself surrounded and held by the light of the heart of Mother Gaia Earth, the light of the heart of your own heart, your own being, and the light of the heart of Source and the divine itself. So you're completely grounded, you're fully rooted, you're anchored and aligned here in your body as a being of the earth and the cosmos at the same time, and a being of the divine, all as one, just like the earth itself is. And you can feel whatever healing, knowing, remembering was just right for you, that can stay, and anything else can go. You can give yourself a hug if that feels right. And take another deep breath. Bring your hands to your heart. And again, maybe say thank you to that being in the outer reaches of the Kuiper belt of our solar system. That being that is also you and each of us. And so it is. Amen. So that's a very rushed version of that, but in the interest of time. I want to share a few things before I end, but of things coming up, including that free symposium that I would love for you guys all to sign up for. But before I do that, does anybody want to say anything about what came up in that experience, or anything else that wants to be said before we end? Pedro. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Martha. Thank you, everyone. What came very clear for me was this disruptive energy to be myself and let go of the image of the good boy. That it sounded really strong in that sense too. Because there is a fear when you are conditioned to be a good boy. Oh, if I do something my way, then the world will end or something very bad will happen. And in my relation to Eris, it's just like, okay, so let it happen. And seems it gives me this strength to go and do what needs to be done and honor my boundaries. Thank you. And I felt this in this meditation too, like this strength to say, I only want in my field what is for me, and all the rest may leave.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
So glad you could be here. Great to meet you. Anyone else want to share? Anyone? Okay. If something comes up, let me know. I will go ahead and share about these other things I want to share about before I close out. I think you guys will especially love to hear about this symposium. It is so exciting. And this is the first time I'm really, really sharing it, because I'm still working on the website. But anyway, anyway. Okay, first I will start with the eclipse gathering I'm having tomorrow. Many of you are already coming. It's free for anybody who's part of my Infinite Soul Wisdom membership, which starts at $22 a month. Or you can also just pay to come to the eclipse gathering itself. It'll be at 10 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow. 2 hours it'll be recorded, so you can have the recording, or you can come live, and we're gonna I'm gonna talk about the astronomy, the astrology, and the energies of the eclipses, and then we're gonna go into some charts, and we're gonna also do a channeled experience of what the eclipses might mean for you specifically. So that's tomorrow, April 21st. Then lots of you also already know about the goddess series that I do with Verena Burrell. Eris-Xena will be one of the goddesses we'll be doing in 3 or 4 months from now. We're currently doing Hygeia. What we're doing is every month we focus on one goddess for the whole month. And we do it in a similar way to what I just did, except that the channel part is much longer. And then we also, so we have a workshop once a month where we go into the astronomy, the astrology of that goddess, whatever planetary body happens to be associated with that goddess. And then we do a channeled experience, again, much longer version of what I just did. And then once a month we have sharing circles where we share whatever the wisdom of that goddess that's wanting to come through each of us. Because again, it's not about being a lecture, it's about the reality that we all are incredibly powerful, wise beings here for a reason. And these goddesses want to come through all of us. So that's our intention with this series. And the next goddess we're doing is Lilith. And I am super excited. I'm already starting to get ready for that month. And yeah, I cannot wait. Right. So the next set of 4 that we're doing are Lilith, Pandora, Pallas Athena, and then Eris-Xena starting next month. But you can join anytime. The workshops have already been recorded. They're all available. Just some of you already attended this Trauma Informed Basics for Astrologers and Healers workshop that I did in February. It's still available if anybody is interested in that. There's more information on my website, but it's available recorded. And then this is the thing I really want to share about. So this is a symposium that I held last year, but I'm holding part 2 this year. So many people loved it, wanted more. So it's last year it was an 8-day symposium. This year it's an entire month. And the focus of this symposium is on healing, our collective healing of our relationships to gender and sexuality. So this year, the way it's going to be structured is that there's going to be 4 weeks, and each week is going to have a theme. Week 1 will be on the divine feminine. Week 2 will be on the divine masculine. Week 3 will be on the divine person, which is including talks on the non-binary, gender fluidity, supporting our transgender and non-binary kids. And then week 4 is going to be called bringing us all to wholeness, re-becoming the one. So week 4 is really going to be focused on the reality that we all, regardless of what our gender is, we all want the same thing, which is to heal our world. And one of the avenues of healing our world is through the lens of healing our relationships to gender and sexuality. So week 4 is going to really be bringing it all together and talking about, collectively, how can we do this? And what is so cool is I'd say about half of the speakers are astrologers. Many of them you're very familiar with, such as Heather Ensworth, Melanie Reinhart, Kelly Hunter. So excited about that. Lots of other people who probably Ari Moshe Wolf, Verena Burrell, Louise Eddington, Michelle Dench, Kaylin Castell, Gemini Brett, and I'm probably forgetting some astrologers here. A lot of these people are not astrologers. Jonathan Coe is also an astrologer. Matthew Engels is an astrologer. Yeah, so there's just amazing, amazing people who are astrologers and who are not astrologers. And like I said, this is all they're all giving talks that are free that you can sign up for. The one by Melanie Reinhart, I already have up there. I was so amazed. I mean, she's amazing, as we all know, and I just wanted to share that one so badly. I decided to not wait until June 1st to share it. So it is available if you sign up. Whenever you sign up for the symposium for free, you can watch the interview with Melanie, and she's talking about her take on the astrology of this time in general. And we talk about Chiron in there and the North Node moving into Aries toward Chiron and lots of themes like that. So she's amazing. Some of the other astrology related talks that I want to highlight because I'm so excited. I did this interview this past Monday with Kelly Hunter. If you guys are not familiar with her, she's been doing a lot of interviews with Pam Gregory lately over the last year or so. And one of her specialties is on the Kuiper belt objects. So she talked about in that interview, which will be part of the symposium for free, cosmic couples, and that included some of the Kuiper belt objects. She talked about Mars and Venus. Then she talked about I'm probably forgetting some of these, Chiron and Chariklo, who are centaurs, not Kuiper belt objects, but that was amazing and fascinating. And then she talked about including others, so Varda and Manwë, which are 2 of the Kuiper belt objects, and that was amazing. I think that interview with her just completely blew me away. Completely blew my mind. Like I had mega epiphanies, spiritual awakenings in that interview with her. Is truly not to be missed, especially if you are into astrology and into the Kuiper belt objects. So that is there. And then Heather Ensworth will be a speaker as well. And Heather actually will also be co-facilitating the free panel discussion that will be the closing panel discussion for the whole symposium on June 29th, which will be live and recorded and free. And I'm so honored that she is going to be doing that with me, because she is, as we know, amazing. And then our emotional wolf, also a really good friend and my first and main astrology teacher. He's doing a beautiful talk on the Aries Libra axis, and then he's doing also an optional paid workshop on the Aries Libra axis in your chart. Kaylin Castell, who I also absolutely love, she did a beautiful talk on Saturn and in Pisces and Chiron and Aries and the power of forgiving and forgivable. I absolutely love Kaylin. So that will be one of the first talks that will be released on June 1st. And then Gemini Brett is going to do a talk on Father Earth and Mother Sky, starry stories of heaven and earth. And that's going to be in the week 3 of the divine person, like mixing up our concepts around gender. And then, like I said, Melanie Reinhart, her talk is a user's guide to the astrological now, and it's free now. So you can sign up anytime. I put the link there in the chat. Yeah, and it'll be included in the video. Sue will be adding that. So definitely sign up. I would love to share all of it with you. It's my baby right now, and I'm spending a lot of time putting it together. So that's pretty much all I'm focused on right now. Awesome. Okay. Anything anyone wants to say before we go? Thank you for all the comments.
Thank you, Martha.
You're welcome. Yeah, be in touch anytime. I'll see lots of you soon.